will be reflecting on the Oneness of God reflection video. Today, I talk with Gregory Miles. He's a gas cashier where I go to all the time. And I started to talk to him in my short time about the oneness of God. And he told to me that he understood who God was and all the given attributes of God, but he couldn't seem to understand why the Spirit and the Son were included in the three-in-one doctrine. And from what all he told me, he grew up learning different concepts of who God was, grew up learning different concepts of this and that, learning different tritheism, polytheism, Trinitarianism, and other different strange concepts that looped after the early church doctrination in Europe. And so I started to talk to him about the oneness of God as I first started with Jesus, because he already knew who God was. So I didn't need to explain that completely to him. And so I started to talk to him about Jesus. I said, Jesus and all of the doctrines you have learned, Jesus never pre-existed God, or he never existed before, prior to his birth in human or flesh form. But the only thing that existed prior to his birth was the Spirit of God, which was already dwelling in him, like it was in John in the belly and the womb of his mother, as Jesus predicted. And I said in Jesus, 1 Timothy 3:16 and Isaiah 9:6 perfectly states who Jesus is once one predicts his birth, and all the given titles that he coincides with God. And 1 Timothy 3:16 also perfectly states how for without great controversy is the mystery of godliness revealed, for God was manifest in the flesh, seen of angels, preached unto the Gentiles, believed on in the world, and etc. And I said, and with that being said, we also have greater verses like Isaiah 10:30 that says, Jesus is talking, I and the Father are one. And I also said unto him, Jesus was not just some theophany of God, special interest, or some whatever person, as some of these gospels like to put it. I said, but Jesus was the literal manifestation, as 1 Timothy 3:16 perfectly states that and what it says. And then I also mentioned different stories from Matthew, Luke, and John, the Gospels of Jesus, and Acts. And in these different verses, in these different passages and stories and parables, Jesus perfectly explains who he is and all the miracles and all the workings he do. He never points to himself, but he points to the one who was able to let him do it. I said, and probably one of the greatest of these stories, we have the temptation of Jesus. When Jesus was being tempted, he mentioned to Satan, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God, referred to himself as God. And before I come back to that, I mentioned in my time with him, my short time, the Spirit of Jesus also. So the Spirit of Jesus is the same as the Spirit of God and the Spirit of Jesus. They're all one, intertwined. The mind of God is the mind of Jesus, and vice versa. And I said, like, we have this example when Jesus went to go pray, and Jesus was praying, and he had to learn how to separate his humanity from his divine abilities. And when he learned to do that, he could express God even more in his image. And I said, and when we went into deeper passages, I began to tell him that the Spirit has always been around, as in Genesis. And I said, and Jesus himself, which is God Almighty, he even predicted that the Spirit would come into play when he was at the mountain of transfiguration, and he talked about a great comforter coming to help us all. And with all that being said, I hope I was able to convince him to think otherwise on it. When I talked to him, he didn't really seem that convinced, or nor did he seem that really convinced, or maybe I wasn't expressing it in the best light in my short time with him. And I pray he thinks more about it. And thank you. Praise the Lord today. Today I will be reflecting on the oneness of God reflection video. Today I talk with Gregory Miles. He's a gas cashier where I go to.